Now I'm going to show you how you can add an imagery information resource. I'm going to use the example of a ground photograph. And if you have other imagery types of information resources, please refer to the PDF tutorial in which there are more examples for these other image resource types. So for a ground photograph, I have photograph here as a resource type, and in this case it's a digital one, so I've got digital image as format. I go to the imagery card, ignoring the bibliography and cartography and share data cards completely, and I can click here and scroll down through these fields to enter them, or I can click on the plus, which opens the fields in the card tree over here, and then I can enter them from here one by one, like this. It depends on your own preference. So if I go through them one by one here to keep everything simple in a way, it starts with catalog ID. So just to say, the fields are exactly the same as in the previous version of the database. There are no new fields here. Just for, I think, one field, it has changed how it's entered. But for catalog ID, this is the same as before. So you enter as free text the ID. So for example, the original source identifier for the image, like a file name, the catalog number. If you don't know this information, it's absolutely fine to leave this blank. If this photo is from your own collection, it might be worth considering adding a sort of system for catalog numbering, so you can keep track of which photo is in the EMINA database. For example, for the photo that I'm going to use as an example, I'm using the EMINA system, which starts with EMINA, then the initials of the photographer, in this case PF, then the site name, then the date, so in this case the 26th of April 2018, and then the number of the photo taken on that date, in this case the first one. Then I click on Add. Then I go to the next field, which is Source. So this is a drop-down menu as before, so I'm going to choose the source company, institution or collection from which the imagery was purchased or sourced. This is important because this is where the copyright of the image normally lies. In this case, it was produced by the Endangered Archaeology in Middle East and North Africa, or EMINA, our own project. So I'm going to click on that and add that. It is possible that it has more than one source, in which case I could go back here and add the next one. The same for catalog ID. You might have multiple catalog IDs, right? So you could have a catalog ID, or you might also want to add the original photo number. It's all fine. Right, so I go to creator. So this is who took the photograph essentially. And in this case, this field has changed in the same way that the assessor name field has changed, in that it's now linked to a person organization record. So I search for the photographer in this case. This is myself. I can see there are 3 different versions here. I'm going to use this one, and we will merge these versions eventually in this database. And I can click on Add. Then I go to Image Details. This is also a known field group if you've used the database before. So it starts with imagery platform type. So this is the platform or vehicle from which the image was taken, or that operated the camera or sensor. In this case, what's important to indicate, it was hand operated on the ground. Then the imagery sensor type. So the specific name or model of the camera or sensor that was used. Very often this won't be listed. It depends on various camera types that are listed, so you can check if it's there. But if it's not, or you don't know, you can either say unknown or other unlisted. In my case, it's not in the list. Then it goes to imagery bands type. For photographs or video, you have essentially the choice between black and white or color or hand colored. In this case, it was a modern photograph, it's taken in color. Then subsequently we go to imagery, camera, sensor type. In this case, we have the choice between digital and film, in most cases for ground photographs. And in this case, it's a digital image. And then finally, we have imagery, camera, sensor, resolution type, a whole mouthful. But this is the resolution of the image at the time of its acquisition. For ground photographs, this is really relevant for satellite imagery. You can see lots of options there. But for ground photographs, you normally say other, unlisted, or unknown, depending on if you know or not. And then I click on Add, and this adds this group. Going down, the next field is imagery sampled resolution type. This is the post-processing resolution. So if the image was processed and it changed resolution, what is the resolution now? Again, for photographs in this case, it's actually probably not applicable because it wasn't processed, or it might be unknown. I'm going to go for unknown in this case, but for ground photographs, if you haven't done anything to it, then wouldn't. But you might have resized it to make it fit in a database, but you might not. In this case, it's actually the case. I've made it smaller so it doesn't take up so much space in the database, but I'm not quite sure what it ended up as being. Then the processing type sort of speaks for itself. So this was it georectified, orthorectified, for example, for aerial photos? Maybe it was originally an analog photo and it was scanned. In this case, I resized it, as I said before, to make it smaller, to fit in the database better. Well, I say fit in the database, but to not take up so much space loading. So I click on Add. Then the date of acquisition. So there are quite a lot of fields, but these are all very useful fields. The date of acquisition is the date at which the photo was taken. In this case, I'm just going to look back what it was again, because I've just edited it. Yeah, I found it. So it was the 26th of April 1918. So I'm going to navigate there. I'm going to April 26. This is a very important field because it helps us, or anyone that looks at this photo in the database, it helps people understand when changes happened. So even if you don't know the exact date, it's still good to give an indication at least, right? And maybe you can put in the comments that it's an approximate date. Then the date of the file might be different from the acquisition date. For example, if the resizing happened at a different date, which it did in this case. So if I did the resizing today, then I'll just leave it like this, or I navigate to the correct date. And I click on Add. And the final field here is very important and should always be filled in. This is the copyright. You should make sure that this is correct. In this case, it is a Creative Commons copyright, so it can be shared. So I choose the right one, and I click on Add. And there is a list of, in the glossary, you can find what all of these mean. So these are all the fields filled in for the imagery card. Now for images, it is also relevant to have a location normally, and there might be a file to upload, and there might be some additional information to type in. So the location of the photograph, or potentially of the photographer, can be very relevant here. So you can do this. How to do this exactly, you can refer to the Heritage Place Geometries tutorial and video to find out how to do this exactly. So I'm not going to show you again here. But it's very helpful to add a location to a photograph. And in fact, we always should do this so we know where it's taken from. Even if it's linked to a site, it's still important to do this because then you know where on the site this was. The file upload, so if you have the copyright, if you're allowed to upload a file, then you can select the files here. So just as you would do for any other upload online. I'm sure you're used to this. You just click here and you select the correct file, and this is then added. Finally, normally we always leave this free text field empty. This is the description. We don't like to use it very much because it's not very well searchable, but for photographs this can be very handy. You could add a short description of what this is, but what's mostly important is also to add the direction in which it was taken, for example, that sort of information, or if there was anything. So, for example, you didn't know the exact date of the image and you used an approximate date, or if there was, for example, you want in the location, you added the location of the photographer rather than the photo itself, the photographed objects, I mean, that you might want to add that, or you should really add that as well here. Then finally we have the related resources, which I will discuss in a separate video.